Good evening, everyone. I am C. Aman Rajput, moderator of this webinar. We are delighted to welcome you all in this webinar being organized by Committee on Commercial Law, Economic Advisory, and NPO Cooperative of ICAI, which is focused to encourage chartered accountants to shape strategy and policy that unlocks economic, financial, and social value by combining analytical fortnight and commercial acumen. The core area of this committee is to serve multifunctional task of analysis, spreading knowledge, providing inputs to regulatory bodies, and policy formulation to develop and publish technical guidance and background materials, extra. Also, this committee works on creating awareness for professional opportunities for chartered accountants in areas such as commercial law, economic advisory, and NPO cooperative. In today's webinar, our eminent speaker, CA Gayatri Gupta ma'am, is going to talk about prospects for CAs under environmental laws, hoping it will be useful for all our members. Now, let me introduce our today's speaker for the session, CA Gayatri Gupta ma'am. She is a practicing chartered accountant from Meerut, working in field of direct and indirect taxes. She is currently the chief editor of e-newsletter published by Meerut branch of CIRC of ICAI. She has been addressing recently qualified chartered accountants for interview preparation for last 2 years. She has also addressed newly qualified CAs at CIRC level. She has authored more than 20 articles published on various online platforms, also contributed in many branch journals. Currently, she has been acting as a guest lecturer at Chaudhary Charan Singh University, Meerut, where she takes up lectures on the intellectual property rights, laws, industrial laws, environmental laws, and laws related to the competition. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Aman, for the introduction. And firstly, I'm thankful to the committee for having me as a speaker today. And I really cherish such platforms where I can share my knowledge. Aman, just to correct you, my name is Gyati, not Gayati. Okay, so let me share my screen. Do let me know if it is visible. Yeah. Is it visible, Aman?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So we'll be talking about opportunities for chartered accountants in environmental laws. So being chartered accountants, we have discussed and we have studied about corporate laws. Corporate laws include your Companies Act. Corporate laws include your FEMA, LLP, insolvency, your SEBI. So all these acts come under corporate laws. We are also practicing under economic laws like we have RBI Act, we have GST Act, Income Tax Act. Also, all these acts form the part of economic laws. Then we've also studied about business laws, which include Indian Contract Act, Sale of Goods Act, Negotiable Instrument Act. So we have gone through all these corporate laws, economic laws, business laws. Right. And also in newspapers, we see news like newspapers are filled with GST updates, income tax updates. So we think यार अगर ये सारी चीजों को लेकर डिस्कशन हो रहा है तो यही लॉस चल रहे हैं. So environmental laws के बारे में we being chartered accountants, we are not generally aware. So we may think that nothing is being done in the direction of environmental laws, or environmental laws do not have any wider scope for chartered accountants, right? So we have to understand that if we know less does not mean there is happening less, because environment is such an issue that is not talked or not discussed just at your state level or your district level, but it is a global issue. All the countries are right now, they are currently so much concerned about protecting the environment, bringing out the rules and regulations that impact the environment. So it is not it means because it is not being discussed, we are not entering into this territory. So we may be under the impression that environmental laws are not for us and there is no much scope, but it is not the case. It's a global issue. So it has a lot of scope. So in today's session, what we'll be covering, we'll be seeing what are the environmental laws in India. And we'll start from the very scratch because this is a completely new topic for all of us. So we'll begin with the very, no, with zero and with very basic concepts. So what are the environmental laws out there in India? How these laws have emerged, and what are the timeline of international events, and then of course the very important segment, what are the opportunities available for chartered accountants. So we'll explore all these things in today's session. Now let us understand what is environment. So Albert Einstein has given a very simplified definition of environment. He said that everything that is not me is environment. So everything except me but around me is environment. So everything forms a part of environment. The air I am consuming, the water I am consuming, everything, people around me, they all are the part of environment. So this definition reflects that how wider the scope of environmental laws are. So because everything is covered under the environment, right? So talking about the legal definition, it is given as per the Environmental Act. Environment includes water, air, and land, and the interrelationship which exists among and between water, air, and land and human beings, other living creatures, plants, microorganisms, and property. So just have to you get the idea that environment is actually a very wider topic, and being chartered accountants, we can fit ourselves in different roles. So we'll explore that throughout the session. And these environmental laws, they come under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Of course, there is one more ministry, which is Ministry of Power. So some of the acts which are concerning environment, they come under Ministry of Power as well. So there are two ministries right now, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and Ministry of Power. Shri Bhupendra Yadav ji is Union Cabinet Minister. So most of the laws that are there regarding environment, there are around 50 plus rules, regulations, notifications concerning environment. So they come under the ambit of this ministry. And also the Ministry of Power, like we have Energy Conservation Act of 2001. So that comes under the ambit of Ministry of Power. Moving ahead, as I've already told, that there are around 50 plus laws concerning environment, but we have handpicked few of the prominent acts, like the Environment Protection Act 1986, very important and very prominent one. The Air Prevention Control of Pollution Act 1981, then Indian Forest Act 1927. Probably this is one of the oldest act related to the environment. Then we have the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. Then we have the NGT, the most recent one, the National Green Tribunal Act 2010. The Forest Conservation Act 1980, the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991, the Compensatory Afforestation Fund Act 2016. So you may have got the idea that environment includes everything. That means there are acts on air, there are acts on water, act on wildlife, forest, and then environment, and of course public liability, and then of course we have NGT, right? So we'll first talk about the Environmental Protection Act 1986. Why this act came? You must have observed its year. It is 1986. So this act came upon a very tragic, subsequent to a very tragic incident, that was Bhopal gas tragedy. And I believe that all the viewers are aware what happened during Bhopal gas tragedy in the year 1984. What happened? Around 45 tons of a very poisonous gas, methyl isocyanate, that escaped from that plant and it spread everywhere. Right. And also, you be vigilant that this case study will tell you that how compelling the situation was to bring laws related to the environment. Right. So what happened during Bhopal gas tragedy? A poisonous gas leaked from that power plant, and then it spread everywhere. Then later on investigations were conducted, and it was found out that what was the reason of this tragedy, what was the reason of this escaping of this gas. So it was discovered that substandard safety procedures were there, and there was the scenario of understaffing. So the things which may appear small to us, which may appear means useless or not so worthy, they may cause such a huge tragedy. So that is why it is important to take care of all these things. Like we are standing in 2025, and this tragedy took place in 1984. So around 40 to 41 years have passed, but still people who were affected by this Bhopal gas tragedy, they are still exposed to its after effects. So you may understand how important environmental laws are, because even after 42 years, we are not able to reverse the effects that were caused due to this tragedy because of this small, because of that small, no, like no one took a heed to those safety procedures, and we thought that there must be like 10 people instead of deploying 20 people. So that small mistake led to such a huge catastrophe. So that is why it was important and for the government to come out with the environmental laws. And similar to it, not to that extent, but around this particular time only, one more incident took place. That was Shri Ram Food and Fertilizer case that took place in Delhi. So what happened in this case also, one of the toxic gas, oleum gas, it was leaked, and it caused respiratory problems and lot of problems, neurological disorders among people who were working in this factory, and not only to the people who were working in this factory, but also people who were living around that premise. So it also had some serious repercussions. So what happened afterwards? MC Mehta, you must have heard about. He's very active environmentalist. So he's also lawyer and he's very active environmentalist. So he filed a PIL in Supreme Court. And what happened later on? Because of this case, because of his PIL, there was the concept of absolute liability that came up. To absolute liability, it suggests that if you are handling any hazardous substance, then you are solely responsible for it. Then you cannot get any respite from anything. You cannot make any excuse. So you will have the absolute responsibility. So these two cases were there that happened in India itself, and that led to the emergence of Environmental Protection Act in 1986. Then there was one more case which happened in Japan. It was regarding Minamata disease that occurred in 1956. What happened in Minamata disease? Minamata disease, Minamata is actually a neurological disorder, and how it happened, that neurological disorder, it happened because of that mercury, because of the mercury that was discharged into the river by the industries, right? So the mercury which was released by industry as an industrial waste into the river, it was consumed by aquatic animals, and those animals were later on consumed by human beings. So mercury got transferred from industry to human beings in indirect form, and that led to this Minamata disease. So it happened in 1956, and Minamata is named after the city which is there in Japan. So Minamata disease was there, and is my screen visible, Aman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So resuming here. So Minamata is named after the city in Japan. So Minamata, it led to many problems, like it led to numbness, it led to like birth defects. So you can see the people who were born during that period, they came up with, they were born with such birth defects as shown in the pic on your screen, right? So what I meant to say, that environmental laws are very important, and they should never be, undermined. Their importance should never be undermined, because you cannot reverse, you cannot resort to the original condition even after years of efforts. It means 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, but you're not able to, resort to the original condition. So it is very important to take care of the environment, and environmental laws have a lot of opportunities to offer. It is up to you whether you want to get into that territory or not, right? So then we have the case of yellowing of Taj Mahal. So far we have discussed three cases. We have discussed about Bhopal gas tragedy. We have discussed about Sri Ram fertilizer that led to the emergence of Environmental Protection Act 1986. Then we have discussed about this Minamata disease. There was methyl mercury poisoning. So there was an action taken on the global level. There's Minamata summit that happened in 2013 that talked about these industrial waste and how they should be treated. Right. So some laws had emerged post some catastrophe. Something bad happened, and then some laws have emerged. But there were some cases where government had been very proactive and it took action timely, like the case of Taj Mahal, yellowing of Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal was turning yellow, and government sensed it very quickly because of the acid rain. So Supreme Court directly intervened into this case, and it didn't let state government, UP government, to act, but it just instructed that you move all the coal-based industries out of that Taj trapezium, out of a defined area within the vicinity of that, within the territory of Taj. So it instructed that all these industries should be moved out of that Taj trapezium. So this was a proactive action which was taken by the government, and this was very important because Taj Mahal is one of the seven wonders of the world, and of course, India takes a lot of pride when coming to Taj Mahal. Then there was Dehradun Valley case again. In this case also, government took a proactive action. What happened in Dehradun Valley case, that there was a quarrying of limestone. So whenever anything is extracted from the mines, what they resort to the process of blasting. And when blasting is done, of course, it affects the nearby area. So government instructed that it can lead to a major catastrophe, and it can be hazardous and dangerous for the people living nearby. So it instructed that this limestone quarrying should be stopped immediately. Right. Then there's this very interesting slide, because I'm also faculty at CCS University. So I teach the subject over there. So I ask students that whether you can go out and you can smoke in public places. So most of the answers I get, yes, ma'am, we can go, and what's a big deal in it? If someone wants to smoke in public place, of course he or she can do. No one is going to stop. So you have to remember that smoking in public place has been prohibited from the year 2002 onwards. So it has been around 22 23 years since the smoking is banned in public places, but we are not aware of it, because we see people in public, they are smoking openly and no one is stopping them. No, they are not being fined for it. So because we are not implementing any law, does not mean that there is not any law in place. So we have to understand, we have to be responsible. Any law would have meaning only if we are going to implement it in the true sense. Otherwise, it would be useless. So there is a law that smoking in public place is banned, and we have to abide by it. That was just a small piece of information. Moving ahead, let us talk about some of the international events that took place. Just a moment. So is my screen visible, Aman?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there's a Stockholm Conference one now.
Yes, ma'am.
So you must have studied the concept of sustainable development during your school time. So that Stockholm Conference gave this term sustainable development, and Stockholm Conference has been very pivotal conference that occurred in the year 1972. Many of the nations participated. I guess 90 plus countries participated in Stockholm Conference, and it was later named as United Nations Conference on Human Environment. So it also propagated the idea of 21 principles, and it also said that right to live in a better environment and hygienic environment is a fundamental right to everyone. It's a fundamental right of everyone. So Stockholm Conference has been very important since then. And then in 1992, 1997, 2002, many conventions took place in other years as well. So I've highlighted these 4 years because they talk about sustainable development. These conferences, they were centered around sustainable development and Agenda 21. So Agenda 21, which is about different aspect of environment, different 21 aspects of environment. So 1972, it proposed the idea of those Agenda 21, and then 1992, 1997, 2002, these conferences took place with an idea to implement those Agenda 21, right? Other than that, we have other conventions as well, like Ramsar Convention. It took place in 1971, Stockholm Convention in 2001, then Vienna Convention, Montreal Protocol. They were about ozone layer depletion. Then Kyoto Protocol. It was also there for ozone only, like Vienna and Montreal. Then Rio Summit, UNCCD, Basel Convention. So if you observe that various conventions have been taking place for last 40, 50 years. So every country they are proactive and they want to implement such actions that reduce in the carbon emissions, that reduce pollution worldwide. So countries have been active, and it is not like once in a while they are meeting. They have been meeting regularly. So this again reflects the importance of environmental laws and the scope it has to offer. The If you have heard the recent news, it is about net zero carbon emission, which has been targeted by many countries. So it is decided by conference of parties which meet annually, right? So we have the target to reduce the carbon emission and to reduce it to zero, and all the countries have the target to achieve that net zero carbon emission by 2050, and for 2030 we have the target to reduce that carbon emission to 45%. 45% of what? The level we had in 2010, the carbon level we had in 2010. Right. So all the countries have been very proactive in this regard. Moving ahead, as already told, that the environmental laws come under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and this is the screenshot of their website. If you want to have if you want to have the look, if you want to have the access to recent literature, you can definitely visit their website, and you'll get the latest literature about all the applicable rules and regulations on their website itself. And also you'll get the link to various other important websites below at the bottom of this website. You'll get many related links. Moving ahead, what does this ministry do? Ministry acts as a nodal agency in the country. Like we have discussed about various conventions that are taking place globally. So whatever is being decided at the global level will have to be implemented at the national level. It will have to be implemented at the state and the district level as well. So everything that has been decided, it will be implemented through this ministry itself. Right. So ministry is helping, it is acting as a nodal agency. It is helping in executing various programs, which is suggested by UNEP, which is suggested by SACP, CEP. So these are different bodies that were. So this ministry is helping in executing all those programs which are suggested by these bodies. Right. Then broad objectives of the ministry are conservation, survey, flora, fauna, forest and wildlife, prevention and control of pollution, afforestation, regeneration of degraded areas, protection of the environment, and ensuring the welfare of animals. right? So these are some of the objectives with which the ministry has been set up. Now, being chartered accountants or being legal practitioner, we always have this option to provide consultancy advisory services to our clients. Like if any client, if any person comes to you that and he asks you, I want to set up a factory, what laws I have to comply with. So you are going to tell him that you should obtain your PAN, your TAN, then your GST registration, income tax, and then of course there need to be compliance with labor laws, Factories Act, and all that. You have to also you have to also comply with the environmental laws. So we always have the option to provide advisory services to any related to any act which our client require. So we can provide that advisory services for environmental laws as well. Right. So, but for providing that, we need to have the understanding of how the environmental laws are working and what they are centered about, what do they talk about. So, what I have tried to cover in upcoming slides, I've tried to pick some of the important provisions from different acts and will be discussing them so that you have the understanding of what things are covered under different environmental laws. So, firstly, we'll be discussing about Pollution Control Board. Pollution Control Board, you must have heard about them. They operate at two levels. First, at the central level, so there we have CPCBs, and then we have SPCBs. They have been set up under Section 6 of the Water Pollution and Control of Pollution Act 1974. And what do they do? And let us also discuss their constitution. PCBs have one full-time chairman. They have the representative of central government. They also have the members of the state board, members to represent the interest of agriculture, fishery, industry, or trade. Then they have the representatives of corporates and companies. So they include the representation of from various sectors just to have the understanding of how the environment is impacting different sectors. So that is why they have included members from different and varied backgrounds. Then we have one full-time member secretary. They are operating in 37 divisions and 9 regional directorates. So this is the organogram I've taken from their website. Now, if the important question comes, what does CPCB do? So they provide technical services. We have understood about the ministry. What is ministry doing? Ministry is acting as a nodal agency. It is executing all the programs that are discussed globally. And it is also working for with different agendas for reforestation, reducing deforestation, for conservation of flora and conservation of wildlife, flora and fauna. Right. Now, CPCB is also providing technical services to that ministry. How it is providing technical services? You must have observed that the data like what is air quality index today? What is the water level today? Not water level, but yeah, of course, we get in our phones the data of air quality index. कि दिल्ली में कितना pollution है आज, मेरठ में कितना pollution है. Like so, all these data is being collated and collected by CPCBs and SPCBs, right? So air quality monitoring and the data related to the fresh water. So all these technical details are provided by CPCBs to the ministry, right? And CPCBs, we have discussed that they are operating at nine regional directorates and 37 divisions, right? Then moving ahead, there are 9 there are 9 directorates, regional directorates. It is 7 only. So, but in actual, there are 9 regional directorates. 2 may be missing from the slide. Moving ahead, PCBs, they are required to provide their annual reports. And since they are a government body, so their annual reports are placed before central government and state government, which is later laid before both the houses of parliament. So being a chartered accountants, where we can fit ourselves into the role of preparation of annual reports of PCBs, right? So that has to be done within 4 months of the last date of the previous financial year. Then CPCBs are also subject to accounts and audit. So does every government body. So CPCBs and SPCBs, their audit report is laid before both the central government and state government. Or means if it is SPCB, if it would be laid before state government, and if it is a CPCB, it would be laid before central government, and then both the houses of parliament. And who is going to be the auditor? The person who is duly qualified to act as an auditor under Section 141 of the Companies Act. But we have to remember that the who acts as the auditor of all the government organization, the one who is empaneled with C&AG, because it is Comptroller and Auditor General of India that is going to assign the auditor to all the government agencies. So of course you can be the auditor, but you need to be on the panel of C&AG, and also SAI. Will be discussing about SAI in upcoming slides. Right. Moving ahead, now discussing about certain provisions of Environmental Protection Act. So, Environmental Protection Act 1986, very important section of this act is Section 3, of which entrusts central government with some defined but of course very very humongous powers. So central government has the power to plan and execute nationwide program. You must have heard about Swachh Bharat Andolan. So that Swachh Bharat Andolan, it is operating at the national level. How it is operating? Because central government has the power to execute that nationwide program by the virtue of Section 3 of Environmental Protection Act 1986. And then as we have discussed that Bhopal gas tragedy and the Shriram fertilizer case, it led to this birth of this act. So what was the main issue over there? Because they were using some substandard safety procedures. They were not using a good product in their premises. So Environmental Protection Act took care of all those things that happened in the past. So government has also the power to lay down the standards for the quality of environment in its various aspects. It can also lay down the standards for the emission or discharge of environmental pollutants from various sources. And of course, it can restrict the areas in which your industry or your operation or processes or class of industry or operation or processes shall be carried out or shall not be carried out. So like we have discussed the case of Taj Mahal. So many industries, many factories were moved out of the area by and because the government had the power to restrict the area in which any industry can be set up. If it is not harmful, if it is harmful for the environment, it can instruct a particular premise or industry to shut down or shift its operation. So all these powers are entrusted with the central government through this act only. Then moving ahead, central government, as per the act, has the power to direct the closure, prohibition, regulation of any industry, operation or process, the stoppage, or the regulation of supply of electricity or water or any other service. So you can see that they have extreme powers. They can ask you to close your premise if they think it is in the interest of our environment. So they may ask you to close your premise. They may put restriction, lifetime restriction on you. They may prohibit you, or they can regulate any industry, operation or process, or they may also regulate the supply of water or air to your premise, right? And if you are aggrieved, if your client is aggrieved with such an order, then they may go to NGT, this is National Green Tribunal. The National Green Tribunal, it was established in 2010 and it is governed by the National Green Tribunal Act 2010. So what is NGT? NGT is a fast track court. So it's a fast track court come tribunal where all the cases that comes before NGT have to be disposed of within the period of 6 months, maximum 6 months, including the extension. So it is tasked with providing effective and expeditious remedy in cases relating to the environmental protection, conservation of forest and other natural resources, and enforcement of any legal right relating to environment. The tribunal's orders are binding and it has the power to grant relief in the form of compensation and damages to the affected person. But we have to remember that if you are aggrieved by any order which is passed under any environmental law, is not could not be entertained under NGT. what I meant to say, not all the acts can be challenged, not all the orders under all the environmental laws can be challenged under NGT. It means there is a selective criteria. And NGT has presence in 5 zones. North is situated in Delhi, and then we have Central, East, South, West, and of course, Central zone is located in Bhopal, East zone in Kolkata, South zone in Chennai, and West zone in Pune. And it is headed by a chairperson who sits in the principal bench, and it has at least 10 members who are judicial members and 10 to 20 members who are expert members, because judicial members may have the knowledge of law, but technical members will definitely have the knowledge of different aspects which are concerning the environment, right? So it is important that those members need to be from the technical side, and they have the understanding of how anything or any industry is affecting environment and to what extent. So that is why NGT has a mix of judicial members and technical members. And if your case is referred to NGT, so minimum you can say there will be 21 members who will hear your case. There will be the bench of 21 members, right? Then moving ahead, who may submit cases to the tribunal? The question which I was about to discuss. So not all the environmental laws can be challenged under NGT. Only the orders which are passed under Water Act, Water Cess Act 1977, or Forest Conservation Act 1980, Air Prevention Control of Pollution Act 1981, Environment Protection Act, Public Liability Insurance Act, Biological Diversity Act. Only the orders passed under these acts can be challenged under NGT. And who is currently chairing this NGT is Justice Prakash Srivastav. Then moving ahead, let us discuss some of the more important provisions of Environmental Protection Act 1986. So far we have discussed about Section 3 that was entrusting central government with certain power. Now let us discuss about other sections. Section 7, it entrusts government to impose restrictions or thresholds. Restrictions on means whether you can operate in this particular area, whether you can manufacture this particular item or not. So such kind of restriction can be placed on any person by the government. Then Section 10 talks about powers of entry and inspection. Powers of entry means inspector. There are inspectors assigned, so according to the jurisdiction. So inspectors, they have the power to enter your premises, provided that it should be done. That means they can come in the presence of occupier only, right? So they can come and visit your premise, provided a notice is served to you, and provided the occupier is present during the visit, right? So these are some of the legal technicalities where you can make yourself well versed with, and you can provide consultancy to your clients if you have the understanding of what is legally right, what can be challenged in the court. And one more thing, you can provide advisory services, but you cannot represent in NGT unless you are practicing as an advocate. So you can limit yourself to just providing advisory services and, of course, reporting and this audit functions. So coming back to Section 10, power of entry and inspection. Then that inspector who is coming to inspect your premise, he has also the power to take samples. But you have to remember a technical point over here, that any sample which is collected by an inspector cannot act as an legal evidence unless it is supplemented by the report of a government analyst, right? The sample which is collected from the premise needs to be in the sealed container, and it needs to be signed by the occupier, and then it has to be taken within the reasonable time to the environmental laboratories, and then that sample would be checked by government analyst as per section 13. So you can say, like if you have watched CID, so CID, what happened in CID, that any evidence come, so it is referred to the forensic lab, and Professor Saduke, Dr. Saduke is there. So Dr. Saduke, you can understand him, you can consider him as a government analyst, and his forensic lab can be understood as environment laboratory, right? So any sample which is collected is to be collected in a sealed container, and it should be signed. It is to be taken within the reasonable time. You cannot delay taking it to the environment lab, and then it would be investigated and by the government analyst, and then a report of government analyst would be issued. So that report is going to act as legal evidence, not the sample, right? Then so these are some of the important provisions of Environmental Protection Act 1986. Now talking about Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, so it also contains very much similar provisions. So you can say this Environmental Protection Act is actually nothing but it's a parent act for Air Act and Water Act. So you'll if you read Environmental Protection Act, so then it is like you have already read Air Act and Water Act. So Section 19 of this act has gives the power to the central government to declare any air pollution control areas. Means any area can be declared that this area in this area any factory cannot operate because it is increasing the air pollution. So this is how it can be restricted. Power to give instructions for ensuring standards for emissions. Then it's a self-explanatory thing. Then restriction on use of certain industrial plants. This restriction can be imposed on certain industrial plants. Then power of board to make application to court for restraining person from causing air pollution. So if they are talking about power of board, so which board they are referring here? That is CPCB, which we have discussed, Central Pollution Control Board. So the CPCB has the power to make application to the court if they want to restrain any person from causing any air pollution. Then power of entry and inspection, similar sections. Then power to obtain information. Obtain information from the persons or from the occupier or the employees who are working in that premise. Then again, power to take samples of air or emission reports. So they all these powers are already given to CPCBs and inspectors. Reports of the results of analysis of samples, state air laboratories, board analyst. Then now, like they are taking the samples, they are collecting the samples, they are issuing the report. But if someone is aggrieved by their orders, so what can be done? They can approach to NGTs also, but before approaching to NGT, they need to file an appeal to the appellate authority, which would be an appellate authority would consist a bench of 4 people. One would be the chairperson, and the other would be 3 other members, the judicial and technical members. And then, if you are still aggrieved by the decision, by the order, then you can go and file an appeal to NGT. Right. So these were some of the provisions of Air Act and Environmental Protection Act. So you can definitely provide advisory services to your clients who are, on whom environmental laws are applicable. Then talking about CSR, CSR is also the part of ESG reporting. So I believe we understand what does ESG mean. ESG is a set of non-financial factors, right? So financial factors, but it is assuming a lot of importance these days. There are certificate courses by ICAI on ESG. So ESG stands for environment, S for social, and G for governance. So E is for environment, what impact you are causing, your industry is causing to the environment. And then S is like whatever means what treatment you are doing to your employees, whether your policies are in the interest of employees, right? So S is for social, and then comes your G, governance. It talks about the independence and transparency while taking the decision. So CSR is again corporate social responsibility is a very much part of this ESG reporting. So you can also provide consultancy and advisory services to your clients, to your corporate clients, to meet this CSR criteria. So CSR, it means corporate social responsibility, and we all are aware about this Section 135, the Companies Act. It means any projects which you are undertaking for the betterment of the society, and it should not relate to the employees of your company. It should be for the society, not for the employees. So if you are required to fulfill the CSR if you have the net worth of 500 crore rupees or more, or if you have the turnover of 1000 crore or more, or a net profit of rupees 5 crore or more during the immediately preceding financial year, then you should form a CSR committee. And how much you are required to spend? You are required to spend at least 2% of the average net profits of the immediately preceding 3 financial years. And it is also suggested that companies should give preference to the local area and areas around which the company operates. Right. So what comes under CSR? So there is an annexure as per the Companies Act, Schedule 7, annexure A. So it can be related to any activity that leads to the eradication of hunger, poverty, malnutrition, or that any activity which leads to the promotion of education, or including special education, employment enhancing vocational skills, or any activity that is leading to gender equality, empowering women, ensuring environmental sustainability, ecological balances, protection of flora and fauna, animal welfare, agroforestry. So all these things are listed in Annexure A. Protection of national heritage, art, culture, including restoration of buildings. So measures for the benefit of armed forces veterans, war widows, their dependents. So you can definitely provide guidance or advisory services to your clients regarding the compliance of Section 135 as well. And you can also help them in making the CSR expenditure. Contribution to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund or any other fund set up by the central government for socio-economic development and relief and welfare of the scheduled caste, tribes, and other backward classes, minorities, and women. Moving ahead, oops. Now comes environmental auditing, and now comes that important question, that what are the opportunities for chartered accountants when talking about environmental laws? First is sustainable reporting and assurance. Then we have carbon credit accounting and trading. Then we have environmental regulations. We'll talk about them one by one. Right. So environmental regulations and compliance advisory, green finance sustainable investment advisory, ESG and climate risk advisory, taxation incentives structuring for sustainable projects, forensic audit investigation of environmental fraud. So these are the 7 areas where you can enter as a chartered accountant, and of course they are gaining a lot of momentum these days. So first comes your sustainability reporting and your assurance. Like if we talk about finance, you must have heard about finance. Of course, finance. We talk about when we talk about financial reporting. So what do we do? That we as chartered accountants we help in financial reporting of the company as per the global standards like IFRS, like Ind AS. So similarly is the case with sustainability reporting and assurance. There are various frameworks that are at the global level, at the national level. So you can assist your client in this sustainability reporting, in preparing the accounts as per the sustainability standards, right? So like companies are required to show their environmental impact under the global framework. And what are those frameworks like IFRS sustainability disclosure standards, like we have SEBI BRSR, we have GRI. So we'll talk about them one by one. Aman, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So please let me know if the screen is visible to you.
Yes, screen is visible.
And is it moving?
Yeah.
So talking about the sustainability reporting and assurance. So, as we have discussed, that companies are required to report their environmental impact under global frameworks like IFRS sustainability disclosure standards, SEBI BRSR, and GRI. So, these terms may be appearing very new to you. So, let us discuss about them one by one. So, International Sustainability Standards Board is there. It's an organization. So it has developed global sustainability disclosure standards. And companies must follow to report their environmental impact, governance, and social responsibility. Right. So you, as a chartered accountant, can help your client in preparing their financial statements as per those standards, those global standards. Secondly, if you are handling any listed company, so what you can do, SEBI has prescribed BRSR. BRSR is Business Responsibility Standard Reporting, Sustainability Reporting. So it has been made mandatory for top 1000 listed companies. So BRSR has been made mandatory by SEBI for top 1000 companies. So you can, of course, assist in your client in financial reporting as per those BRSR. And then we have also one more framework, which is GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. Right. So one field is this sustainability reporting as per IFRS sustainability standard disclosure standards, as per SEBI, BRSR, as per GRI. Then you can ask your client in carbon credit accounting and trading. So what are carbon credits? Carbon credit is like is a reward which you get if you engage into the activities that reduce the carbon emission. And if you have that if you have one carbon credit, it means that you have helped in reduction of 1 ton of CO2. So carbon credit is like that. If you there is a prescribed standard for every industry, right? Which means how much emission it can make into the environment. So a limit has been set, and that limit has been set by the Ministry of Power. Energy Conservation through Energy Conservation Act 2001. And one more, a moment, please. I just show you the screen, the website from where you can get this one. Wait, just a moment. I'm just getting that slide. So there is this website, beeindia.gov.in. So this is the website of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? So what standard has been laid out for the carbon emission, you can get that information from this website. So now explain you the concept of carbon trading. Since the standard has been laid out for for various sectors and industries, so if you exceed that standard which has been laid out, so you'll be penalized for it, right? But if you do not cross that threshold, and if you know your carbon emission is less than that standard, that maximum limit, so you will be rewarded the carbon credit, right? So there is the concept of carbon credit trading, that if your emission is more than that standard, that lead standard, you'll be penalized, and you would be required to buy carbon credit from the companies that have achieved that their target, that their whose carbon emission is less than that standard. So you can that company needs to buy carbon credit from another company. So one more area where you can practice is carbon credit accounting and trading. So you can assist your client in keeping the account of all the carbon credits it has, and it had all those carbon credits that have been utilized or sold or purchased. So that accounting can be done. And now if I'm explaining this to you, it may sound very small concept to you, but it is actually gaining a lot of momentum these days. So carbon credit accounting is very good area you can venture into, and of course you can assist your various clients into its trading as well. Then we have environmental regulations and compliance advisory. So environmental regulations and compliance advisory. So we have discussed throughout this session that if you can engage in providing compliance services, advisory services to your clients regarding different environmental laws. It may be any law, Environmental Protection Act, Air and Water Pollution Act, but for that, so that is the traditional thing you can engage into providing the consultancy services. Then green finance and sustainable investment advisory. Green finance means all the banks are now these days they are preferring those projects that are in the betterment of the environment. So green financing is nothing but financing those projects that are low on carbon emission and that are in the benefit of environment, and that's saving the energy. So if you can guide your clients about this green financing, you can arrange such finances for them because they are at very lucrative rates. So you can engage into this green financing. Then you can provide the consultancy regarding ESG and climate risk advisory. ESG, we have already discussed that it is a set of non-financial parameters that talks about business ethics and its social value. So environmental, social, governance. So these three parameters need to be adhered to by the businesses, because it is very important these days, because investors are also preferring those companies who are more ESG compliant. So from investor point of view, from bank point of view, so company is getting funding from on the basis of their ESG rating, right? So because banks are also preferring to aid those projects which are in the betterment of environment, investors are also preferring those projects which are and those companies which are more ESG compliant, right? Then taxation and incentive structuring for sustainable projects. You can guide them about the tax benefits a company can enjoy if it is complying with the various environmental laws. Then forensic audit and investigation of environmental fraud. Now, you must have heard about the concept of greenwashing. So greenwashing is making false sustainable claims. You are making claims like you on papers you are showing that you are compliant, you are ESG compliant, but if it is discovered that you have made the false claim just to attract the investors, just to seek the funding from bank, then you may be heavily charged and you may be levied a great amount of penalty. So if you are a chartered accountant and you also have the technical knowledge forensic audit, So you can engage yourself into this area where you can discover these incidences of greenwashing and finding out the companies with false claims. So basically, if you see, we have all those traditional fields only. We like reporting, we have auditing, we have accounting, taxation, advisory services. But now one prefix has been added, that everything should be related to the environment. If it is reporting, then it is not financial reporting, but it needs to be a sustainable reporting. If there is to be accounting, then it need not to be a normal financial transaction accounting, but carbon credit accounting. Then advisory, so advisory is not your traditional advisory, income tax or GST related, but your environmental regulations advisory. Then your ESG, climate risk advisory. And finance, so इससे पहले आप जो भी फाइनेंस कराते थे अपने क्लाइंट्स का, तो वो नॉर्मल फाइनेंस होता था, बट नाउ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्रीन फाइनेंसिंग. And then taxation, so we are guiding our clients about the taxation and incentives that are available to the companies that are working for the environment. Then forensic audit and investigation. So all the roles are actually the traditional roles, but we are talking them in the terms of environment. So this is the site, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So we have already discussed it. Then coming on the previous slides, this is environmental auditing. So I think, as we have already discussed, environmental auditing is that means auditing that what impact does an organization have on environment. That is what environmental auditing is all about. So, then we have who conducts the environmental audit. Like if you want to go for environmental audit for your organization, then the NECA can be hired for it. But if we're talking about the government organization, then who is going to regulate it? It is Supreme Audit Institution. Supreme Audit Institution, it works under the aegis of CNAG itself. Right. So every government organization audit is conducted by CNAG. And when we're talking about environmental audit for government organization, then it is conducted by Supreme Audit Institution. It is a separate body that looks after the environmental audit part. Right. So SAI is headed by Comptroller and Auditor General of India, who is a constitutional authority, and it derives its mandate from Article 148 to 141 of the Indian Constitution. And Constitution. While fulfilling his constitutional obligation, the CNAG examines various aspects of government expenditures and revenue, and the audit conducted by CNAG is broadly classified into financial compliance and performance audit. Right. So if we're talking about environmental audit, so it comes within the broad framework of compliance and performance audit, right? Because it has nothing to do with finance. So the audit conducted by SAI is within the framework of compliance and performance audit. Then these are just like technical facts. They are conducted by SAI India for the last 25 years, and they were formalized with the introduction of specialized guidelines, MSO audit, for the conduct of environmental audits. And SAI India designated the office of the Principal Director of Audit as the nodal office for environmental audit. This office undertakes exclusively environmental audits of the central government programs all over the country. And you can get to know more about this SAI by visiting its website. There is a regional training institute in Mumbai, which has been designated as the nodal training center to impart training to officers and staff of SAI India on environmental auditing. And SAI India has conducted more than 100 specialized environmental audits over the last 25 years. Then let us look at some of the important decisions that have been taken by SAI. They have issued Green Office Guidelines. Now, what are Green Office Guidelines? Green Office Guidelines. It's a like Green Office Guidelines. The name suggests that you need to reduce the use of stationery into your office. And how can you reduce the use of stationery? By by taking less prints. Yeah, by taking less prints, by using more of the more of the digital content instead of that stationary content. So these such guidelines have been issued by SAI. Uh, so so it has been guiding in all the offices all over the country to reduce the detrimental effects of office operation on the environment by resorting to more sustainable and efficient use of office resources, and it also assists the ministry for the effective management of waste in India. So SAI is the supreme audit this institution. It is actually playing multi roles. So it is also engaged in auditing, but and at the same time, it is also issuing guidelines for the people out there, and it is also providing support services to the ministry by preparing policy for the effective management of waste in India. It has also prepared guidelines for the fourth E, integrating environmental concerns in auditing. So we can say that it also assists in making literature, in devising literature for different sectors, literature regarding environment. Then environmental audits, they can be divided into 5 categories: air issues, water issues, waste, biodiversity, environment management system. So this is again suggested by Supreme Audit Institution. Now, let us talk about environmental auditing and environmental impact assessment. So, what is the difference between the two? Environmental auditing and environmental impact assessment, they are not same. Audit is done once the thing happens, means once the financial year is over, then you conduct the audit. But when talking about the environmental impact assessment, so it is the activity which precedes all the other activities. Like so environmental auditing एक लास्ट का कॉन्सेप्ट है, कोई चीज हो गई है उसके बाद आप एक ऑडिट कर रहे हो एनवायरनमेंट का कि इसका इम्पैक्ट क्या रहा एनवायरनमेंट पे. Environmental impact assessment is actually it is assessing what impact it is going to have on the environment in future, right? So it is an anticipatory tool. It takes place before an action is carried out, and it therefore attempts to predict the impact on the environment of a future action and to provide this information to those who make the decision whether the project should be authorized. EI is also a legally mandated tool for many projects in most countries. So it is also one of the areas where you can enter into. But yeah, it is, I would say, it is more of a value or worth to the people having technical background rather than chartered accountants. Environmental auditing is a field definitely, but environmental impact assessment, it is the work of environmentalists. Then environmental auditing is carried out when a development is already in place and used to check on existing practices, assessing the environmental effects of current activities. Environmental auditing therefore provides a snapshot of looking at what is happening at that point in time in organization. Then what are the key differences between financial audit and environmental audit? I believe we all understand what is the difference between the two. Financial audit is an annual affair and it is not even mandatory. But environmental audit, it can be it is generally a voluntary affair, and it can be done at any frequency whenever the organization decides to perform it. Financial audit is performed by external staff, or there is no bar when we talk about the environmental audit. It can be performed by external as well as the internal staff. Financial audits, they are based on the comparative standards like GAAP, and environmental audits, they varies very much between the auditors and the companies. Although when we talk about the global frameworks that are there for the reporting purposes, so we are going to we definitely expect some of the frameworks that are going to be devised on the global level when it comes to auditing very soon, so that the results are comparable of audit reporting. So as far as the reporting is concerned, we have the global frameworks as we already discussed, like IFRS sustainability standard reporting standards. But for audit purpose, uniformity is yet to arrive. And the financial audits, the results are public documents. They are in the form of annual reports. And when we talk about environmental audit, it is very rare that a few audits that they are made public auditing documents. Then, when talking about financial audits, they provide true and fair view, and there is no external liability implication in the environmental audit. Then we have this standard ISO 14001 2015. It's an internationally agreed standard that a requirement for environmental management system, how an environment should be managed. So it talks about that thing. So it is helping the organization to improve the environmental performance through more efficient use of resources and reduction of waste, gaining competitive advantage and the trust of stakeholders. So means it talks about the general things, like how can you make the efficient use of the resources, and how can you reduce the waste, how you can get the competitive advantage, and how can you gain the trust of your stakeholders and shareholders. So all these things which we have discussed so far, but it is not mandatory to comply with. But yeah, of course, if you comply, it is going to affect you positively. And then there are reasons listed why it should be adhered to, because it demonstrate compliance with the future statutory and regulatory requirements, and it increase leadership involvement and engagement of employees. It's completely a theoretical concept. Uh, and as already discussed, that it is not a requirement, and it can but still, like if you are complying with this, definitely it is helping you in building a positive image of your organization, and gaining a trust of your stakeholders. So from that point, you should definitely go and you should obtain this certification. And there are other standards also in this family that can help you gain credibility into the market. So that was all from my side. So Aditya, if there is any questions.
In case any questions, you can post it below. We'll wait for 5 minutes.
Mhm. Meanwhile, we can quickly run through what we have discussed so far, right?
Now, there is one question.
Mm,
ESG audit requires environmental audit.
uh, Environmental audit is like there are different parameters. So environmental auditing is helping whether you whether an organization has complied with different laws related to the environment. uh, just to elaborate more onto it, let me share my screen. Just a moment. So yes, like financial audit, if we talk about financial audit, so what is happening in financial audit? Your financial statements are prepared, and but when a chartered accountant is conducting the audit, what he is suggesting, that financial statements present true and fair view, right? The financial information which is contained to the financial statement is actually showing the true and fair view of an organization status, right? So similarly is the concept of environmental auditing. So environmental auditing, what does it suggest? It suggests that it is essentially an environmental management tool, and it suggests that whether your organization has complied with different environmental laws and what impact it had onto the environment, right? So any chartered accountant who is conducting the environmental audit will first see which environmental acts are applicable on a particular organization, and then it will see compliance with those environmental laws, right? So this is what environmental auditing is all about, and also the environmental impact it is going to check, right? So this is all the environmental auditing is. I
Any other
hope.
question? Now, there is a question. Is CA permitted to do environmental audit as per Code of Ethics, Code of Conduct, and whether any specific ethics rule are applicable?
Yes, CAs are allowed to do the environmental audit, and there is breach. There is no breach of any regulate means any ethic, if you say. Just there is a bar on a CA that he cannot represent an NGT. Right, only advocate can represent before the NGT, but yeah, you can do the environment audit. You are definitely eligible under Section 141. Right. But it is you need to have the understanding of the environmental laws and some of the technical information that is contained in those environmental laws. Otherwise, there is no bar as such. And yeah, if you do some certifications that are offered by ICA, that will definitely help you in gaining an advantage over the others. And it is very promising field, I believe. Because there is no competition as such. Not many chartered accountants are entering into this field, so you can definitely go and conduct environmental audits. Aman, you are on mute.
Or shall we conclude?
Yes. Mm,
Or shall we wait for more questions?
yeah, I can just quickly run through all the slides
Yeah, sure.
so that if I by chance miss anything, so that can be covered as well. So let us quickly go through what we have covered in today's session. We talked about the environment as per the Environment Protection Act, the definition that is given into this act. Then we have discussed about which ministry is formulating and they're devising these environmental laws. This is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and one more ministry, which is Ministry of Power. That is, super. Uh, that is come up with this Energy Conservation Act 2001. Then we have discussed about different environmental laws. We have seen and discussed two acts out of these two or three acts. So these were some of the prominent environmental laws we have talked about. And then we have discussed about the Environmental Protection Act in detail. And then we have also talked about some of the provisions of Air Prevention Control of Pollution Act. So Air Act and Water Prevention Act, they both are replica of each other. Then we have also discussed about NGT, about the benches of NGT and where it is headquartered and what are its composition, what cases can be challenged to the NGT. Then we have discussed how this Environmental Protection Act emerged. It emerged subsequent to Bhopal case tragedy that took place in 1984, and then Shri Ram Food Fertilizer case that took place in 1985, and in 1986 we had this Environmental Protection Act. Then we discussed a few case studies like Minamata disease in Japan, then yellowing of the Taj Mahal, Dehradun Valley case, and then we have discussed the timeline of international events that are taking place, that took place. So one of the very important event that was Stockholm Conference. So we discussed that the concept of sustainable development and right to this healthy environment, which we say is a fundamental right of everyone. That idea was suggested in the Stockholm Conference, and it also suggested the idea of that Agenda 21, which again formed a part of all these later conferences, 92, 97, 2002. And then we have discussed, we have seen the list of all other conventions and protocols that took place. Then we discussed about Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. You can have access to to their literature by visiting their websites and checking their rules and regulations. You'll find the latest version of the acts. And then we have discussed the role of this ministry and what are the broad objectives of this ministry. And then we discussed about PCBs, and they're operating at two levels. Then we discussed about their composition, how they are constituted by having full-time chairman and representative from different section of the society, and then having one full-time secretary member. And then this is the organogram of CPCBs. What information CPCBs are providing? They are providing information regarding the air quality index and then water quality index, water quality management. So they are providing all this information to the ministry and people out there. Then we have also discussed about the opportunities for a CA. He can engage in this preparation of annual report of a PCB, and then we can also engage ourselves in the preparation, in conducting the audit of these PCBs. Like if you analyze that there are around 37 divisions and 9 regional directorates, so there is a lot of scope you can engage. One auditor cannot audit all these 37 divisions and 9 RDs. So you have a lot of opportunities in getting the audit assignment, provided you are on the panel of C and AG. And then of course CAG conducts the audit of these PCBs through its institution, which is SAI, Supreme Audit Institution of India. So you can search more about it, and it offers the certificate courses as well, and you can get impaneled there, provided you fulfill their criteria, which is laid out by them. But yeah, if you are a person who is eligible under Section 141 of the Companies Act, you are eligible to conduct the audit. Then we have discussed about the Environmental Protection Act, Section 3, the powers which are entrusted to the central government about laying down the standards for the quality of environment and laying down the standards for the emission and discharge of environmental pollutants, executing nationwide program, restriction of areas, and if you're aggrieved by any of the orders of central government, so then you can approach to NGT. Then we have discussed about NGT. That was it is a fast track court, a come tribunal, which believes in disposing any case within the period of 6 months. It was established in the year 2010, and it has 5 benches in five regions: north, central, east, south, west. And it's headquartered in Delhi. And then we have discussed about NGT and its composition. We have one full-time chairman and 10 to 20 technical members and 10 to 20 judicial members. Then we have discussed who can submit case to the tribunal. So any order which is passed under these 7 acts may be challenged to NGT: Water Act, Water Cess Act, Forest Act, Air Act, Environment Public Liability Insurance Act, Biological Diversity Act. And then we have discussed other provisions of Environmental Protection Act. Then also discussed the provisions of Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, whether you can means who has the power to declare air pollution control areas, who has the power to enter and inspect your premises, who has the power to collect the samples. And then we have also seen that if you are aggrieved by any of their actions, you can challenge it to the appellate authority first, and then afterwards you can go to NGT. Then we have talked about CSR, that corporate social responsibility, where you can check the compliance of your clients about the whether CSR is applicable onto them or not, and then you can guide them where they can make the expenditure to comply with the Section 135 of the Companies Act. Then we have discussed about environmental auditing, as already explained, that environmental auditing is ensuring that you have complied with the environmental laws applicable onto you or not. And then we have discussed about the opportunities for chartered accountant. So it is sustainability reporting. So in the sustainability reporting, we have discussed about the compliance of a company with the global frameworks and also the national frameworks. Then in this, we have discussed about the IFRS sustainability reporting standards, which are laid down by this IFRS board. And we have also discussed about BRSR, business reporting sustainability standards, which are laid down by SEBI, but it is applicable to the top 1,000 listed companies. And then we have discussed about GRI initiatives, then carbon credit accounting and trading system. So we have discussed about what are carbon credits and how their accounting and trading can be done by a chartered accountant. And also understood that one carbon credit is equivalent to 1 ton of the carbon reduced or avoided. Then we have discussed about environmental regulations and compliance advisory, and there is a scope for chartered accountants to engage in green financing, ESG, and taxation and incentive structuring for sustainable projects. And then forensic audit. And in this, we have discussed the concept of greenwashing. Greenwashing is making false claims about sustainability compliance. Then we have discussed about this Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So this bureau, this body has been enacted and it works under the Ministry of Power. And this has come into the existence through the Energy Conservation Act, which we already mentioned in the beginning. So on this website, what you'll get the standards which have been emission standards which have been laid out for different industries and sectors. Then we discussed who conducts the environmental audit in India. As far as the government organization is concerned, it is conducted by Supreme Audit Institution. And then we have also discussed what is the role of SAAI. SAAI, it is headed by C&AG, and it conducts the environmental audit, which comes within the framework of compliance and performance audit. And then we have discussed that it has been conducting audit for last 20, it is actually 28 years now, it's not 25 years. So it also provides training at its regional training institute in Mumbai. And it has already conducted more than 100 specialized environmental audits. Besides conducting the audit, it also issues various literature on different topics. Like it has issued in past green office guidelines, how sustainable practices can be resorted to into the offices, and how to reduce the waste, how to handle policies for the effective management of waste in India, and literature on fourth E. So these literature have been no, they have been prepared by SAI. And then we're talking about the environmental audit. So they have been divided into 5 categories by SAI itself: air, water, waste, biodiversity, and EMS. Then we discussed about the difference of environmental auditing and environmental impact assessment. So, environmental impact assessment is more like you are conducting a due diligence of a particular client, but due diligence in terms of environment, whether this project would be viable, whether this project is going to be in the no, it is not going to be harmful for the environment. So that is what environmental impact assessment is. And so it is an anticipatory action, and this environmental impact assessment has been mandatory for in various banks and organizations. If they are investing into the project, they are definitely going to conduct the environmental impact assessment of any company or any project. Then we talked about environmental auditing. We already discussed it. uh, then we understood the differences between financial audits and environmental audits. Financial audits, so they are done at a specified period, means annually. The frequency is generally annual, and they are conducted by a chartered accountant, means a person who is not related, whose independence is maintained. But such cases are not, in such restrictions, or the conditions are not with the environmental audit. They can be conducted by CAs, they can be conducted by non-CAs. Right. uh, they can be also like, when we talk about internal audit, so internal audit can be conducted by any employee of the company as well. So similarly is the case with environmental audit. There is still the need of some global framework that can streamline the process of environmental audit for various organizations. For government organizations, we have already a system in place, but that has been devised by SAI. But for private organizations, we need a framework. Then we have discussed about this standard ISO 14001, which talks about the requirements of environmental management system. And we have also understood that such standards are not mandatory to comply with, but of course, if you comply, then definitely you are going to have an advantage over the others. And there are other standards also in the family that can help you. So this was all from my end. So we have discussed, we have also revised. So that was all from my side. I hope means discussing it in detail, and there are still many things that can be discussed, but I have tried to provide you a framework of how environmental laws means they what areas they are covering within their ambit, and how these environmental laws have emerged. So I've tried to highlight those things into this brief session today. So over to you, Aman.
I'm going to take last four questions. So first one is, has ICA prepared form of reporting and special standards of auditing for environmental audit?
Mm-hmm.
This is the question. Has ICI prepared form of reporting or special standards of auditing for environmental audit?
Yes, but they are, yeah, means there are standards by ICAI, but they are yet not made mandatory. So means it is up to you. If we are talking about private organization, so it is up to us that means we can go for that format or we can skip that. So means it is up to it is on to us that whether we want to go for that thing if we are private organization. But for government organization, of course, there are the process is streamlined.
Okay. Next question is, what are the environment related disclosures requirement related in financial statements of company or entity prescribed by the Environment Act?
Environment.
Environment related disclosure requirement of environment.
If we talk about the Environmental Protection Act, if I take the example, so they talk about the means whether you are means like there are the disclosures which sector you are operating into it, and then what kind of operating procedures you are using, what kind of material you are using. So it is on the technical side. So those disclosures are to be given, means how many labors you have employed, what is the area that you are operating in, right, what how many machines you have installed. So such type of questions you'll find in the Environmental Act and also in the labor laws. So those disclosures have to be given as per the Environmental Protection Act.
Okay, ma'am.
Mhm.
Question is, what are the key differences between sustainability reporting standards and environment related act like Air Act, Water Act, etc.? Are the auditing aspects same or different in both the concepts? Do BRSR and Environment Acts correlate?
uh, can you repeat the question, please?
What are the key differences between sustainability reporting standards and environment related act like Air Act, Water Act, etc.? First part is this. Second part, are the auditing aspects same or different in both the concepts? Do BRSR and Environment Acts correlate?
Like if I say that sustainability reporting is a wider concept, but when we talk about Air Act, Water Act, they are confined to that particular aspect of the environment, right? So and sustain if we talk about sustainability, it is definitely a wider concept. It that what it is. Sustainability includes more areas, and air and water, they are, they narrow down to a particular thing, like whether your quality is maintained in terms of air or in terms of water.
Okay. Last question. The audit of PCB and other government organizations are performed by CAG.
Mhm.
For environment audits, do we need to impanel with CAG, or CAs can do audits independently as well?
So this has been answered during the session itself. If we talk about PCBs, if we talk about any other government organization, you'll find a lot of bodies that are operating under this ministry. So all these ministries would be audited uh, by the auditors who are impaneled on CNAG, right? And when talking about whether you can do it independently or not, but for government organization you cannot do it independently. You definitely need to be impaneled with CAG. And for private organization, yes, you can conduct the audit independently also.
Okay, ma'am. So let's end the session for today. As we come to close of today's webinar on prospects of CAs under environmental laws, I want to take the opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude to everyone who have attended this session and made it a success. Thank you, Gyati ma'am, for being our distinguished speaker, for your expertise and thought-provoking perspectives on this topic. I also acknowledge the efforts of Committee on Commercial Law, Economic Advisory, and NPO Cooperative of ICAI for conducting such an informative webinar. It has been privileged to moderate the session and facilitate such meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you for moderating session today. And thank you everyone for your undivided attention. Thank you, committee, for providing me this platform.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.